such as we remember Hector Peterson. We remember Mbuyiseni Makhubu, who carried Hector Peterson, whose remains have not been found since this day. We remember people like Solomon Mahlangu and many other young people who decided to rise and fight for our liberation. 2025 marks 10 years since the Fields Must Fall movement. We appreciate their fights for the right to equal education, for their fights and right to free and affordable education for all. 2025 again marks, I think, 5 years since the Council Call case was filed and launched at the High Court in Pretoria. The case has since become an illustration of youth activism and what happens when young people decide to rise and take responsibility for their future. People of the EJ movement, people of the CJ movement, I greet you and welcome you all. My name is Tshepang Molefe. I'm from Groundwork Friends of the Earth, South Africa. The Council Call case was launched in 2021. It sat down last year in October 2024, and judgment was handed over in December, I think the 4th of December 2024, historical judgment. Youth power and climate justice, reflecting on the Council Call case and victory. Today we have at least, I think, 5 speakers, people who have been involved in the case, who will share their experience and how they were involved in the case, who will give background to the case, what happened during the hearing, what happened when judgment was handed over, and also what we need to look for in the future in terms of the judgment. Now, I think this is a celebratory event because the judgment itself is an historical judgment. But I won't give much detail because we have, like I said, we have some speakers who will actually share their experiences of working in the case and what we've achieved. Without any further delays, I would like to hand over to our first speaker. Michelle Sithole will give us an overview of the legal case and the judgment and the broader environmental and constitutional implications of the judgment. Michelle Sithole is an attorney with the Center for Environmental Rights. Thank you. Michelle, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Tshepang, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll just basically begin by just giving a background into the case and how we got here. The Council Call case and the campaign is a result of years of advocacy highlighting the impacts, health and climate impacts of burning of coal for electricity. Following years of engagements with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, as it was known at the time, the producing of the Integrated Resource Plan, which is South Africa's electricity plan, which essentially provides for all the sources of electricity that South Africa will produce its energy from. We'd been engaging with the minister and the department for years around what should be included in there, and particularly that fossil fuels shouldn't be included in the Integrated Resource Plan, particularly coal. Once again, highlighting the health and the climate impacts of coal. Those engagements failed, and the 2019 IRP was then produced, and the 2019 IRP contained 1,500 megawatts of new coal-fired power. This then resulted in us writing to the minister asking for information around how he arrived at this decision, And those engagements failed, and then we eventually launched the case. The case is important for a number of reasons. The case highlights not only just the health and climate impacts of coal, but the case was also quite important because it was quite important in terms of countering a lot of government's narratives around the importance of coal. Government often says that coal is important because coal is a cheap source of energy, because coal is important for jobs. So these are some of the things that we needed to counter in our papers. And it was quite important to have those expert affidavits come forward just to counter those narratives. But more importantly, the case and the campaign was an important platform for young people to voice their concerns around this decision. And I think it's particularly important because government had completely neglected youth in the public participation processes. They didn't consult youth. So through affidavits, young people were able to come forward and voice their opinions around the decision to produce energy from coal. And we had a number of young people, some from Cape Town, who spoke about the climate impacts that they'd experienced during day zero, which was a severe drought in 2009. We had young people from coal-affected communities in Emalahleni and Limpopo who basically spoke about the hardships that coal has brought on their communities. Because one of the things that government often portrays or tries to tell people is that coal is a source of prosperity for these communities. And it was important for these communities to voice their concerns and say that this isn't the reality that we're experiencing in our communities. We don't have access to clean water. Electricity is expensive, even though we live at the center of where electricity is produced. So these were quite important elements to the case to provide these platforms and provide these expert affidavits to counter the narratives. The case did take some time due to a number of delays on government side in terms of producing records and not filing papers on time. But eventually we went to court last year and we got the judgment, as Thabang said, on the 4th of December last year. The judgment was quite important because the judgment highlights government's obligation, constitutional obligation, to consult with young people when making decisions that impact them. And this is mainly founded on Section 28(2) of the Constitution, which requires that the best interests of children be considered and is of paramount importance in any matter concerning the child. So this case was also particularly important because with the climate impacts that we're experiencing and we're yet to experience, it's quite important for us to make decisions that are for the betterment of future generations. And this is particularly important because Section 24 of the Constitution provides that government needs to ensure that the environment is protected for the benefit of present and future generations. And the decision to procure new coal-fired power was contrary to that. So this was quite important because it's an important aspect of future generations and how they'll experience climate impacts going forward. And there was a report produced by a clinical psychologist, Garrett Barnwell, which spoke about this concept of institutional betrayal that young people experience because they feel that their concerns around climate change and climate impacts are not taken seriously by government. So these were all important aspects of these reports and these stories that had to be part of the papers and the cancel call case and the campaign. The judgment was delivered on the 4th of December. The judgment makes important remarks around, well, one of the biggest remarks that I think is relevant for not just the case, but also the broader movement is this idea around coal being necessary to stabilize the grid. There were a number of reports that were produced that just show that coal isn't necessary to stabilize the grid. We have renewable energy, and renewable energy is a lesser harm to communities and to people from a climate perspective. So it was quite important. What the judge had said in that case was government can't justify their decision to violate constitutional rights on the basis of stabilizing the grid. That is not sufficient justification for the violation of constitutional rights. That was an important remark from the bench from that perspective. And I think it's quite important for other forms of other challenges of coal-fired power, gas. I think that's quite important for the broader climate justice movement. And another thing that the judgment specifically said was around government's failure to consult with young people. This is particularly important because young people have often been left out of public participation processes. And the judgment essentially says that it is important to have children be part of these processes and consult with them. So I think that was particularly groundbreaking. This is the first time I think a court has said with public participation processes of this nature that young people need to be consulted. Unfortunately, the minister has decided to appeal the judgment. And the judgment will be going to the Supreme Court of Appeal for the Supreme Court of Appeal to adjudicate on that judgment. So that process is still unfolding. But I think Karina and the rest of the team will probably tell you how you can still follow the case and the campaign to get updates on where the appeal is and how that goes. But I think I will hand it back to you, Tshepang. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. For giving us that background in terms of the litigation process. But I feel like I need to, maybe now that I have you here, and just get more info, and just how. I know you don't have sort of like psychic powers, but how do you see the case panning out? From here we go to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and do you feel it will go all the way into the constitutional courts? How do you feel about the case?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to say whether or not the case will go all the way to the Constitutional Court. But I think we put out I think a good case. Our papers were very strong in the High Court. So I think even in the Supreme Court of Appeal, I doubt that the minister has good prospects of success there. So depending on what the Supreme Court of Appeal decides, if the Supreme Court of Appeal rules in our client's favor, then the case will potentially be done, or potentially the minister could decide to appeal it. So I think it's just a matter of seeing what happens when the case goes to the Supreme Court of Appeal. But yeah, I think we've brought a very good case, a very solid case. The science is on our side. The stories are on our side. So I think the case is very strong.
Thank you. Well done to your team and the senior counsel as well. And I know you're working with a number of people on the background and the forefront as well. Yeah, and well done. You guys have done an amazing job on this case. Thank you.
Thanks, Tshepang.
This is what happens when young people decide to, take responsibility for their future and say decisions impacting our future will not be done without us. And that speaks to what Michelle mentioned, the RP, which is the Integrated Resource Plan. I think that's the initial, kind of counter challenge to what was proposed in the RP 2019 in terms of the 1,500 megawatts of coal that was proposed in the RP. I think that's how this case was born. And the fact that, it then brings together the energy of youth and the concerns of young people in this country is very important. Thank you. I would like us to move on to our next speakers. We've got some young people who've been involved in this case. We've got Stella from ACA, Africa Climate Alliance. We've got Mbali Mathebula from VEM, Vukani Environmental Movement. We've got Ngobile Khanela from Groundwork, Friends of the Earth, South Africa. And we also have Pretoria Matibana from CR as well. All these young people I've mentioned, they've been part of the case at some point or at the beginning of the case. So we like, to get some background information, also where they are coming from with the case, why they're involved with the case, and how they see the case panning out, and also, how they see the future of young people in relation to climate and energy justice in the country. So, without delaying any further, I would like to call my first speaker. I'm tempted to start with Stella from the Africa Climate Alliance.
Hi, Stefan. Nice to be here, everybody.
So, Stella, you can just introduce yourself and, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here today to speak about this landmark victory. And I just wanted to also note before I introduce myself that I am also standing in for our cancel call campaigner, Sibusiso Mazomba, who had an emergency to deal with. But yeah, I think in terms of who I am, my name is Stella Hertantio. I work as the communications manager at the African Climate Alliance, and we are an organization that works with a network of over 1,000 young people in 20 different African countries, really inspiring young people to take climate action in their communities. And I have been involved with the case since the beginning, from the campaign side, working on the storytelling, and the way that we use this case not only as a legal constitutional challenge, but also as a way to challenge the narratives around coal. And one of the ways that we work with young people to take climate action is by trying to encourage different forms of public participation. And this includes holding governments accountable. So when we worked with the coalition to take the government to court to challenge this inclusion of new coal, and won, it's a huge moment because there are two firsts in this case, as Michelle was saying. The first is that this is the first ever youth-led climate change court case taken against the South African government. And the second is that it's the first time that the government has ever ruled on the impacts of coal on children's rights. So it's a big part of the advocacy we do to challenge what Michelle was talking about, that institutional betrayal, that young people are often not included in these processes for many different reasons, including undermining our ability to speak on our own lived experiences. And in terms of the African Climate Alliance, a lot of the work that we do is to push back at that, make sure that young people's lived experiences are included in our narratives around climate, and that climate is also portrayed as a human rights issue, which is central to this case because our main argument was the impacts of coal on not only people's health, but also the future impacts and the current impacts of how coal is related to climate change as a massive, as coal is burnt, it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions that do contribute to global warming and climate change. So I think for us working in how to include youth in public participation around climate issues, this case became a major part of that. And as we spoke to a lot of young people in the affidavit writing process who shared their experiences, and that became the foundation of the court case.
So maybe Stella, you can just share with us like some of the biggest challenges around in terms of working within the campaign and the case. Like your biggest challenges, what has been, some obstacles,
Yeah, I think the two that come to mind first are just the narratives around coal and also the question of jobs. So one of the biggest questions that we got throughout the entire court case was it became known in our coalition and in our organization as what about the jobs, because it felt like every time we spoke about cancel coal from a youth perspective, people saw us as young people who are anti-development, who don't care about the future of the country in terms of how young people are going to get jobs. And then the narratives around this case just being anti-development and also just environmentally focused as a climate issue and not actually a human rights issue. So the jobs issue was big because I think, as everybody in this room knows, jobs are a big topic on young people's minds. We do have high youth unemployment, and when you're growing up in this country and beyond, that's what you're thinking about how to financially sustain yourself. And so a lot of our advocacy did focus on sharing how challenging new coal inclusion is not anti-development, because we were challenging the inclusion of coal that has not been built. So one, we were not challenging existing coal capacity and anything to do with miners and current jobs in that system. Of course, that is a whole other conversation that we do need to get into and are into, but this case focused on new coal. And secondly, also that coal is already in decline. This is not something that we are spearheading. Our coal industry is already in decline. Jobs are already at risk. And the transition away from coal provides a new opportunity for new kinds of jobs, green jobs, jobs in new economies around renewable supply chains, and all of that. So we've written quite an extensive op-ed on this in the Daily Maverick, which I can share a link in the chat just now. But a lot of our work went into challenging narratives around development and coal as young people who are often called out for being activists who only care about kind of dismantling systems but aren't thinking about the alternatives. And then, yeah, again, to do with the human story. So this isn't just about the climate or about an environmental issue. It's really about how burning coal is affecting people and young people. And I remember at one of the meetings that we had last year, John, who lives in Emalahleni, was sharing when I was talking to him about jobs. He was saying that people always argue that coal brings jobs, but a lot of the young people around him are so sick that they can't even apply or be screened properly for these jobs in the coal supply chain because they don't pass health tests. So I think that was also a moment that has always stood out to me, because we need to question these arguments that we make also about what kind of jobs we want our young people to have and what actually it requires for them to get access to them in the first place.
Thank you. I must emphasize that point around youth unemployment in the country, very high. And, we know how they spin that, in terms of it's working for industry in saying, we want to kill, the jobs that are already available in the coal industry. Yeah, thank you so much, Stella. But also, I want to bring into the conversation someone from Emalahleni in the fence line communities. I want to bring in Mbali Matebula from VEM, Vukani Environmental Movement, to actually share a lived experience, more than anything, to share her story, in terms of why is the case important, why she got involved in the case, basically to narrate her story, of living in the fence line communities. Mbali?
Hi everyone. I'm Mbali Matebula from Mpumalanga, Emalahleni, Kosmani. I'm an environmental activist and I'm a health campaigner. I'm working with them. So I want to share my story with you guys. I'm a single parent to two beautiful daughters, Princess and Asemahle, whom they have a problem of asthma sickness. Through difficult times that I'm facing on daily basis, about the health system and poor service that I receive from the healthcare service. As we know that the place I live in, it's a coal community affected area and high priority area. We are experiencing air pollution each day, no place to run to or hide. That's how I decided to advocate. That's how I decided to advocate for the for the people who have asthma, sickness, and other related conditions, because I have experience of this on a daily basis, and looking forward to work hard and see our community being saved with dignity and respect to have access to proper medication being prioritized. And our big challenge we are facing as a organization engiyo, people were thinking ukuthi sifuna ukubaqedela umsebenzi, like because ilahle yilo elinama opportunity amaningi for umsebenzi. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Mbali. So just maybe one more question. So, what would you like to see happening in your area and your community?
Engasho ukuthi ngifuna ukuthi ilahle lingasabi khona, as thina i-youth sibe nezinto esizenzelayo zona, like ngezandla zethu, singadiphendeli ilahleni, because ilahle alikho right, especially kule ndawo engihlala kuyo. Ilahle alikho right, liyabulala nje abantu, and some people abazi noma bayagula but abazi ukuthi yini le ebagulisayo.
So maybe just to sum up what Mbali is saying, they would like to see a shift from a coal-dependent economy into a more just transition kind of economy. A lot of people are sick, but they're not aware of what's making them sick. So people depend on coal in terms of the region's economy. And when they advocate for the shutdown of coal or the cancellation of coal, they're often approached with the issue around jobs and all of that. Thank you, Mbali, for sharing your story. Yeah. So on that note, maybe let's bring in someone who's also from the Highveld area, was also involved in the case. Ngobile Khanela is a community mobilization campaigner with Groundwork. I'll hand it over to you, Ngobila.
Hello everyone. I hope I'm audible. As it was mentioned previously, my name is Onubila Khanela and I'm a community organizer with Groundwork, and I'm also from the Highveld in Mpumalanga. I joined this campaign because it forms part of the work that we do at Groundwork, which is advocating for a just transition in South Africa. And another reason that I joined this campaign is that I stay in an area, as they have mentioned, as Mbali has mentioned, I stay in an area where we are surrounded with coal activities, and those activities have a huge impact on people's lives and health. I find this case important because it is the first youth-led climate litigation case in South Africa, which goes on to show that the youth of today is aware of what is happening around us. Seeing young people from different parts of the country joining force and moving together towards one goal, which is fighting against the violation of our constitutional rights that is constantly violated. It shows that it gives a lot of courage. The biggest challenge that I had to face with this case and campaign is that I come from an area that is I come from an area where we have 11 functional power stations that are coal-fired, I'm sorry, and then up to 80, roughly 80 mining projects that are constantly taking place. So basically what I can say is my coal mining and coal activities are the heart of the economy of Mpumalanga. So having to introduce this this campaign or case to the people around us, it was challenging and difficult because just by mentioning the name of the campaign, we were already deemed as the people that are anti-development, as Stella has mentioned, and the labor sector went on to say that we are we are after their livelihoods and their jobs, which is a bit concerning because they also need to consider the fact that the coal reserves of South Africa are also diminishing, and some of the power stations that are still functional today will be facing decommissioning soon because they have reached their lifespan. Another challenge that we faced was on the day of the court hearing, where we were met with questions such as, if the air pollution is really affecting the people that are staying closer to the power stations and the mines, as you say they are, why don't these people move? Well, that was really disheartening because it goes on to highlight the gap between people's realities and how people that are more privileged are not do not take into consideration that the people that live on the fence lines don't have the means or the capacity to just up and leave and move from where they're staying, because we also need to consider that they didn't ask for these activities to take place and to interrupt their daily lives. This goes on to show that okay, seeing that gap that was highlighted there shows that we need to, there's still a long way that we need to go with spreading awareness and making the link between air pollution and how it impacts people's lives and health is linked together. So yeah, I'm happy that the youth of South Africa joined force and worked together, and seeing their resilience from the conception of the case until we got the judgment. Seeing them stand together and work towards one goal is really encouraging and shows that a collective voice, it really does make a difference. And I'm hoping that as we go forth, even when the appeal is made by the ministers, I just hope that we will stand firm and be resilient and work towards and keep on fighting for our future, because we also need to consider the fact that if we do not stand up today and work for our future to be and work for our future, we may not have a planet to live in. Thank you. I'll give it back to Tsipang.
Thank you, Mobile. Yeah, maybe one question. Maybe just take us through some of the highlights of the case as you're part of it. Yeah, just share with us some of the highlights of the case. Mobile? Okay, I think we've lost Mobile. So I'll move on to our next speaker. Pretoria Matibana is a candidate attorney with the Center for Environmental Rights. The Center for Environmental Rights. Let me just make that clear. And I would like her to actually share, their involvement in the case and how she sees the case, and why this is important. Pretoria?
Vukani, I think maybe Pretoria came back in. Pretoria, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry about that. I just had abrupt internet problems. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry, had you posed a question to me, Tepang? I
No,
was just off.
No, I just said, I mean, since you're from CR, I mean, I just wanted you to perspective on the case, you know, why you're involved in the case, why you think the case is important, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Tepang. Good afternoon, everyone. So, just as Tepang has said, my name is Petavia, and I'm a Canada attorney at Center for Environmental Rights. I think, you know, the case exists in within a broader concept or context, which is the campaign. And I think I can't really speak on the importance of the case without speaking on the importance of the campaign. I think just as the previous speakers have also highlighted that there's a need to really dismantle existing narratives about climate change. You know, climate change is not this future problem that we can just delay and postpone and say, oh no, but we'll deal or we'll look at this or sort this out later. Climate change is real and it's living. I think one thing that I'm in, you know, full agreement with the previous speakers about, which I think is something that's also important about the case, is that it highlights the disproportionate effect that climate change has on the different communities or the social groups that exist in South Africa. Um, Climate change has a different effect on us who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, as opposed to those people who, for example, have quicker or easier access to things like heating systems in their housings, when there's extreme weather changes, it being either too hot or too cold, which all really stem from climate change. So I think the campaign really does. It presents an opportunity for that disproportionality to be highlighted, and it having now being translated into a case allows that disproportionality to be assessed even by the courts. I think that's really what was done by this case. It looked at the effect of climate change, particularly on the youth. And yeah, I think that's really what stood out for me.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, I mean, generally, you know, within the broader context of energy, democracy, and just transition, you know, I'm asking a very simple question that, you know, what do you think we need to do in relation to spreading the message, you know, to the wider or broader, you know, youth community or young people within the country, you know, to actually realize how important documents like the RP, which is what you know, brought to life this case, you know, the integrated resource plan, because they then speak to the energy future of the country, which then speaks to young people. But not only that, but in a more general context, that decisions made now actually impacts your lives in the future and the next generations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question, Tepang. I think, you know, we're already doing a lot. I think it's commendable that the fact that something like this, a case like this even exists, and the fact that it's a youth-led case. So I think I just have to acknowledge that. But I think that, you know, using this case as a starting point, there's much that we can do further.
For example, one thing that the court did highlight in the case is that it was important for government to actually conduct the public participation process. So that on its own, being acknowledged by the court, sets a very useful jurisprudence or very useful precedent where we can use that or that kind of that jurisprudence to assert our right to participate in public participation processes, even for other plans, government plans, not necessarily just electricity plans, but also other government budget plans that we can get more involved in and look at how budgeting goes on to further impact the money that is delegated into energy planning. And when we participate in those processes, even if maybe we might not necessarily be all the way informed on the models and all the methodologies that they use to put them together, we can grow in our knowledge of, okay, if this is what the budgeting for energy looks like, then maybe this informs the IRP, and we now are able to participate in IRP plans more effectively with that knowledge. So I think using the fact that the court acknowledged that public participation is important is a starting point, because we can use that to get involved in other government planning processes that are subject to public participation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I think, we also need to realize that, just like food, the air we breathe and everything else, energy has sort of like become a basic need, at this day and age. And people need to have access to clean and affordable energy. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Peter. I would like to then engage the people who are within this forum. If there's any questions, Karina, I don't know if someone is monitoring the questions on the chats. Yeah, I'm not sure if Toby is here.
So far, no questions on the chat, so I think we can open it up for people to unmute themselves or put their hands up.
Okay, cool. Let's do that.
And perhaps also at this point, I see many others on the call who have been part of the case and the campaign. So if anyone would like to add anything else to the stories, please feel free to also put your hand up and join in.
Thank you.
While we wait for some hands, there's a question from Liesel Muller. I don't know, Liesel, if you'd like to unmute, otherwise we can read it out as well.
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, I'm an attorney at the Centre for Child Law, and I'm going to be working on these kind of cases in the future. And I would like to know from children, how is it that they would like to be involved? How do they want to litigate? What do they want to say to the lawyers who are representing them?
Karina, should we note the question and take more questions?
Yeah, I think so. Let's take a few.
Okay. Any more questions? Brendan?
Thanks, Tepang, and hi, everyone. It's not questions, it's just a few additional thoughts based on what the inputs have been, which I don't know if now is a good time or...
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I think the one thing that is worth bearing in mind for those that don't know, and many will be familiar with this, is that one of the analyses done for the litigation looked at the impact of this coal choice versus the alternative of not forcing in the coal, which naturally would be renewables. And it looked at the jobs. And it found that forcing the coal in would create half the jobs of a more renewables heavy choice. So obviously we're not talking about existing coal where there are existing people working. But in terms of the promise that developing new coal would be good for jobs, in fact, we've got the evidence that says it's quite the opposite. Obviously, in terms of the existing coal, we know we've got people that have got those jobs. And that's where the just transition comes in, is making sure that those people don't get left behind. So we've got things like the Renewable Energy Master Plan, which is an industrialization plan. We've got needs for things like ecosystem restoration, kind of climate adaptation and climate resilience measures on the ground. And all of those can be done in a labor-intensive way, which creates more jobs and job opportunities. The other thing that came to mind was this concept of the sacrifice zone. So this whole area in eMalahleni and around is basically the people that have been sacrificed for the supposed good of all. So not only do we need to unmake the existing sacrifice zones, we need to avoid the creation of new ones, such as is likely to come in with the Musina-Makata Special Economic Zone, which is one of the reasons why it's really important to push back. And then when, in terms of this thing of being anti-development and the argument that it's for the economic greater good to be doing these things, the reason it can appear to be for the greater good is that when they're weighing up these decisions, they don't take the externalities into account. Nowhere are we saying that the costs of the health impacts, and these costs are known, get weighed up when these decisions are made. So that is an area to push in all social and environmental justice work, is just push for full cost accounting. If we're going to be comparing numbers, let's make sure all the facts are on the table. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. Yeah, I think the issue around jobs, especially coal jobs, came out a lot when different speakers were presenting. Yeah, and it's really unfortunate that the issue around youth unemployment is well, I guess like any other unemployment issue in the country, is actually being used against people, so to speak, as sort of like an ace to push for industry's narrative, to say, we are here, we want to give you jobs, we want to give you development, but then there's these people who are actually challenging us when we are trying to actually develop this country, which is false, because they've had so much time and so many years, and we've basically seen what they're capable of, and what we've seen, it's not something that we like. What we've seen is not something that impacts us in a positive way as people of this country. Yeah. But also, I want to go back to Lizo Muller's question in relation to children's rights. If anyone is willing to take that.
I'm happy to give it a try, just from our experience working with youth legal. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really speak from that perspective, but I think for us, coming into a legal space as young people who primarily work in activist spaces, the legal space can be quite daunting. So I think the first thing that CER did really well is to really simplify the process, constantly using language that was accessible to explain to us at what stage we are, what all of this means, the legal jargon, so that we felt we had a good understanding of what we needed to do in the advocacy and campaign space to support this. I think also what young people come up against a lot is we don't have the fancy language, but we do have the realities of our own lived experiences. And sometimes the way that we say things can be misconstrued to support other people's narratives, maybe because it's not, in the right language. So I think also being aware of the way that young people speak about their own experiences and holding that for what it is, and as a truth that is also worth, having as much weight as any other kind of languaging around it. And then also, I think important for us when we run participatory processes with young people is the types of forums, the types of spaces that we create to have people feel comfortable enough to share openly, to participate openly and engagingly. So sometimes that means having people that they trust. Like sometimes with young people, you have to go to spaces where their parents are present or guardians or peers, things like that, creating spaces where there is a safe space to productively engage becomes quite important, because we have seen in other spaces like young people just shut down because they don't feel comfortable enough to share. So I think when thinking about how to include young people in litigation, the spaces that you create to bring out their stories, how you use the narratives, and also simplifying the process is probably 3 points that I would just add to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Stella. It's a very important question, because by law, or policy, or nature, children are not, are excluded from the democratic process of voting, and also from other democratic processes of actually participating within maybe community consultation and so forth. And I think it's great that someone from the child law is here, Center for Child Law is here, and how we then incorporate that voice within the movement, and also everything that we're fighting for, because that also speaks to the future of this country and also the world in a more global context. Yeah. I don't know if there's any other questions in the chats.
There are a few more in the chat, actually, Tsvang. And also just to note, I've pinned Michelle here again to join our panel for the questions. Michelle, I hope that's okay. So we have a question from Jabulani and a question from Nelly. Maybe Jabulani and Nelly, would you like to unmute and ask the questions directly to the panel?
Can I start?
Go ahead. Thanks, Jabu.
So my question is basically to the community activists. Just wondering how they are intending to continue to mobilize young people to continue to fight for their rights beyond the council call case. Assuming or taking it that we are using this particular the June Youth Month as a month to sort of flag and highlight the importance of youth in the processes of decision making and in them fighting for their own rights.
Yeah, I will let my panelists respond to the question.
Should we take the second question as well, because they might relate to each other?
Sure.
And Ellie, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, sanibonani ninjani nonke, mina ngiyaphila this side. Tsepang uzoyi-translate the question, ne? So I'll just elaborate a bit. So njengoba ngibuzile, yes, ngiyabonga. Njengoba ngibuzile ukuthi what can be done to promote distributive justice, because sibonile ukuthi ugovernment wethu uyasifeyila a lot. So how can we expand information ye just transition, and also youth, not mhlampe specifically involve youth, and also mhlampe abantwana abancane ezikolweni baqale nabo bafundiswe about just transition, so that mhlampe if bakhula they have the idea ukuthi there is something that is called just transition. So how do we narrow it so that everyone can be involved? Because it's not only in it's not only affect only umphakathi, it also involves abantu besifazane, ama-pharmacy, abantu ama-ex coal miners. So how do we narrow the information involve the wonke umuntu? So spread the word of just energy transition. Danko. No,
Okay.
we're not asking a piece. It's a spread of the word, not narrow. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure if people got that. So what basically Nelly is questioning is the issue around distributive justice and also around the just transition itself. How do we make it? How do we break it down for it to be relevant to people on the ground? Because this does not only involve energy, but all other areas or aspects of general life. I mean, she raised issues around, communities, labor, the workers, and so forth. So how do we then break it down to make sure that people actually get the grasp of it and they actually understand what is going on? Are there more questions, Karina?
No more at this stage, so I think we can go to our panelists.
Okay, cool. Anyone willing to respond? Sylvia, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tshepang. I will just try, I'll take a shot at Nelly's question. I think the most important thing, or one of the most important things rather, would be I think it was Stella who spoke about language. The language that we use when we articulate the things of climate change is very important. And I think when you're trying to narrow down the scope of this big concept of just transition and climate change, is just to try as much as you can to make it real to the people that you're speaking to. For example, if you look at reports that were used actually in the cancel call matter as expert evidence, where the report will make a link or connection between climate change and mental health challenges. So perhaps when you bring the narrative to the community in a way that's palatable, in a way that's real to them, that actually, sometimes social unease and social uncertainty can actually stem from this sense of feeling uneasy about how safe you are in the place that you're living in, when effects of climate change can cause physical disruptions, and some people having to consider whether or not for health reasons or whatever they might have to move from their communities, and sort of that anxiety that can build from that, and making people understand that this is not these challenges are not actually separate from climate change. It's all interconnected. I think that could be one way.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if there's anyone who wants to respond to Jabulani's question.
Maybe just a reminder of Jabu's question. Maybe Stella, Mbali, Mobile, one of you could respond. So a question about how young people continue to fight this environmental justice fight and for their rights within the just transition process beyond the cancel call court case, what that looks like in other places.
Yeah, I think I can start. So for us, public participation has always taken many forms. We started as a protest organization after the first big climate change protest in 2019, but we quickly realized that protest is only one way to demand change and to create change as well. And I think a big way for us, specifically talking about the systemic and policy landscape in terms of young people, is that we found that creating versions of our own public participation processes works really well. So keep that also means keeping on top of changes in policy relating to the future of young people. So the IRP that keeps getting mentioned in this call is a good example. We did a lot of work around holding meetings with young people just to explain actually what this is, because IRP is a shortened version of integrated resources plan, and those are very big words, but actually it's talking about how do we get electricity and energy to power things like our homes, to process things like food and all of that. So we hold these sessions to break down, as Batavia was also saying, the language, and simplify so that people understand how it affects their day to day. And then once people understand these policies, when there are opportunities for comment where we feel that young people have been institutionally betrayed or not included enough, then we actually ask young people their thoughts on these specific issues and turn those into a submission that we will then submit for comment on this policy. So we do that quite a lot. We've done it with the IRP, with currently with the IEP and the NDCs. I know I'm using a lot of shortened versions, but it's all climate jargon that we try to actually just simplify and make relatable. So public participation isn't just the litigation side of it, it's also about finding gaps where young people aren't included and trying to kind of, for lack of a better word, force your way in through creative means.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stella. Yeah, so I want to bring in Brandon here, because Brandon is a commissioner with the PCC, and within the PCC, you've got youth representation. But I think it's important that we align these processes, because this is a youth-led case, as you've heard. But also there's work going on within the PCC, which then speaks to the energy future of this country, which Council Cole then went and challenged. Yeah, so Brendan, I'm going to put you on the spotlight here. So I just want to hear your comment around that. Thanks. But this is also in relation to Jabulani's question.
Yeah, thanks, Tsipang. I mean, I think there was not youth representation right at the beginning, and then I think various in various circles called for that, and there is now a youth commissioner. I guess it's just worth sort of understanding what the PCC is and what it isn't. I mean, it's ultimately an advisory body, but in order to come up with the advice that it makes, whether it's on NDCs or electricity planning, it commissions a lot of research, which I think it does very well and very effectively. So in a sense that those would be opportunities to have input as well. I mean, the PCC does call for many dialogues. I think there probably were a total of 6 or more on the nationally determined contribution, including, as I recall, a few especially youth-focused ones. But those are the kinds of places that people need to make the input and come in. And this issue of sort of technical language has come up a few times. I think what's always important to remember is that whatever forum you're in, and even this even relates to written submissions, is you are absolutely entitled to go there and say what you want to say in the way that you want to say it. So just because some of the people are speaking in technical language or whatever the case is, doesn't mean you can't bring your very real experiences and your very real perspective to those conversations as well. And I think, fortunately, I mean, I don't think we necessarily saw this in the judge that gave us the judgment that we're talking about today, but the judiciary in this country is generally very open to hearing those kinds of stories, if one gets as far as court cases. But the thing is that there's so many processes that have got public participation. So one of the things that activists can do in the space is make sure that other activists are aware of those. And then when you do come in and make input, just make it from your perspective. And a very valid one in this case is, well, what does this decision mean for me when, in 20 years' time? Or the people coming after me or future generations. So, and then other than that, it's just to continue staying up to speed with, I think Stella already mentioned the policy, but also with the science. You know, more and more studies get done on all aspects of this. So to really understand what they're saying and try and simplify that language to engage youth and all other groupings as well, for that matter, is very important, and that information is out there. So just unpacking it carefully. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Thank you so much. Corina, are there any other questions?
We have two questions in the chat. One from Sibabalwe. I don't know if you want to ask it yourself. Otherwise, I can read it out.
Hello.
Yes, hi, go ahead.
Greetings to the panel. By name, as mentioned, my name is Sibabalwe Fogas, and I'm from the Eastern Cape, King Williamstown. I'm in a club, environmental club, right? Whereas I can see the initiatives being made to rather reduce climate change and its effects. So my question is primarily around how do we reduce these effects or initiatives of mitigating climate change into like a more just transition in a way that is more relatable to students, because we've had more cases where we tried to incentivize this, rather students seem not to be keen or rather be in awe of this and find any relevance to mitigating such factors that are impacting the climate. Sorry. Thank you.
And then, Tsipang, maybe before we go to the panelists, there's also a question from Pumelelani, who unfortunately doesn't have a microphone to ask the question, so I can read it out. So Pumelelani says, is there an existing program or platform we can use or people we can join as we shape this future-oriented initiative? As we develop a structured program that includes decisions like which trainings to provide, which trainings are already available, where to start and why, what kind of jobs we're aiming to create, which jobs are already available, from manufacturing to distribution to service to maintenance. Is there guidance or support available for planning this kind of value chain within the system we want to create as we shift from coal?
Thanks, Karina. Should we move on to the responses?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first question basically speaks to the issue around the knowledge gap or the information gap in relation to young people actually accessing the information and getting the information and getting to understand the issues around climate justice and climate change. So I'm not sure if any of my panelists or anybody who's involved within the case is willing to take that. Thank you. Mobile?
Okay. To try and answer Spabalwe's question. Well, I'm now going to speak from a perspective of what I do as a ground worker. I'm also part of like I'm working with air quality and health literacy mostly. And what we have been trying to do of late is to bring in the Department of Health, because we saw that fighting this, trying to fight the air quality management plans and the MES and all those things. If we try to do it alone, it's something that's not going to happen. So what we tried as an initiative is to bring in the people from the Department of Health on board so that we can try to work together towards a solution. So I think with regards to trying to find a way to involve students and making sure that they are keen, I think maybe we can try and work with the Department of Education, in a sense that we invite them to the workshops that we have, so that we can build capacity and help them also understand what the work that we do is, and then maybe we can, in a later stage, we can find a way to incorporate the work that we do into the school curriculum. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Yeah, I think schools programs are always effective. I think I've personally I've seen it. Within the Durban area, which has experienced a lot of climate change outputs in relation to the floods. But I also want to, before we move on to the second question, I want to bring back again. I hope I'm getting the name right. Sibabado, in relation to the recent climate change development or floods in the Eastern Cape. I don't know if he's still available or still here. Just to share with us
Yes.
how people perceive it to be. Is it just, do they see it as just a once-off natural disaster, or do they really understand where it really stems from?
Really, with regards to like climate change, I think people do not have a fundamental understanding of what climate change essentially is and how in the long run it affects humanity. So I think the organization should somehow, however, be able to spread the word in institutions that are different, that will be able to actually plant a seed of this is actually a problem that is very much dire. And if not attended to immediately, it can actually become something that is a problem for the greater masses, right? So what I've been thinking of, I don't know if this is actually related to why we're here, but actually it's something in my head. So go about it like institutions, because through institutions, really with the general public, what I've seen, if you try to address this, people like generally dismiss you. So go about it like through institutions of work or however to spread the word, because if you are to do it to the general public, really they do not have knowledge of this. So by spreading it to these institutions, you're able, for me, like I'm taking this from through school, I joined an environmental club, right? Able to tell my neighbors, or rather my parents, to actually be in awe of this. Like try and find a way to reach those peculiar minds, because you may find there are people trying to make this change, but rather due to the circumstances of not being able to reach certain resources, or rather be connected to certain initiatives, efforts like these fail at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. Then I guess it then speaks to the second question, which is groups to join, sort of like capacity building within the space. So yeah, I don't know who's got an appetite for that. Or do I need to nominate someone?
Maybe while our panelists are working up the courage to Vang, I could just draw everyone's attention to Stella's comment in the chat about some of the resources available on the ACA website in 8 different African languages. So there's a link for that in the chat. And then I've also placed a link to, we actually have a Cancel Call website where a lot of our information is stored. So you can go to cancelcall.org.za. But also one of the links on that website is to a how to get involved page, where there's some suggestions for how school groups and university groups and so on could support the Cancel Call campaign in creative ways. So please feel free to check that out as well. It's not by any means a comprehensive list, and we welcome kind of contacting us directly and brainstorming together. That's always something we're very excited about as well.
Thanks, Karina. Any hands? Any questions?
If you're interested in the youth-focused work around climate education and the public participation I've been mentioning, then we at African Climate Alliance, we do have a youth network of young people across the continent that we work with. So you're welcome to join that. I'll put the link in the chat, but also on our website, as Karina was saying, you'll find a lot of different resources in different languages that simplify these topics. They can be printed as posters, put up in schools and workshops, all of that. So yeah, you're always welcome to reach out if you can't find something, but those are just from our side, good ways to get involved.
Thank you, Stella. Are there any more questions, Karina?
There's a comment in the chat from Liesel Müller about a project interviewing children and lawyers for a global research project. Liesel, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that and invite people to join.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to advertise, because I'm doing research with the Centre for Child Law and the University of Cork around better practices to engage with children on litigation. And we are looking for children who have been taking part in litigation to sign up for the interviews. And it can be any of you, no matter how peripherally you were involved, if anybody's interested in that.
Thank you so much, Lizzo. I will send you the invoice for the advertisement. No, I'm kidding. No, anyway, so I just want to get some, if there are no any other questions, I just want to get some final remarks for my panelist, Michelle Sitole, some closing remarks. Where do we go from here?
Thank you, Sipan. Yeah, I think where we go from here, I think in terms of the case and the campaign, I mean, there is the appeal, and I think the campaign is still ongoing while the appeal goes ahead. But I think it's quite important that we don't underestimate the importance of our stories and our lived realities. And I think these are all important components of the case, and I think they're important components of the work that we do going forward. And I think it's quite important, whether it's the just transition work, whether it's related to other projects around climate justice and the climate justice movement. I think that's my only the only thing I can say is like the importance of individual stories and the lived realities, and I think those are the bridge between the science and the work. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Thabang.
Thank you. Stella, parting shot?
Yeah, I think exactly what Michelle was saying is what I would say too. And I think what we found with this case and what we find across the board with topics around climate is that we always need to relate it back to people's health, food, water, electricity, the things that we encounter as human beings on a daily basis, because these issues affect all of them. And that's how we get to build this movement and have people understand that it's not some far off dream or scary thing to be afraid of, but it's something that's happening now, and we do have ways that we can take action to stop the worst effects. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mbali, you want to take us home? Mbali? Okay, Mobile, final word?
To my fellow young people, this is our planet and we have no other planet. So we know what is at stake, and in the next 20, 30, and 40 years, we're the ones who have to be sticking. We're the ones who have to stay and live on this planet. So let us not be shaken by people that are trying to intimidate us. Let us carry on fighting for our planet, because it is what it is important for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me call on Bali again. Bali? Final word? Okay, are there any other comments, questions that we need to address before closing?
Maybe final word from Patavia?
Oh, Pretoria, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think most of the panelists have yielded quite nicely. Just keep pushing boundaries. And I would like to also encourage the young people in here, especially he's in the environmental club, that participating in policy making is quite in those public participation processes on policy, on new legislation, and it's steady, but there is movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we recognize the historical victory, but also we acknowledge the work that still needs to be done in terms of making sure that this historical judgment then is reflected within the communities, within our energy planning, within the policies, and within the laws of this country. I feel this is just a start. It's a great start. It's a great victory. However, we still then need to take this and make sure that it impacts on the people on the ground, and it's seen and is also implemented for it to actually make tangible change within our communities. If there aren't any more comments or questions.
Just maybe from my side, where maybe once we've closed, I'll play one of our cancel call videos that shows some of the different voices from the campaign as people are leaving, and we can ask everyone to stay for as long as they want. And also just a reminder to keep up to date with us on this campaign by keeping up on our social media, the Life After Coal social media, Groundwork, Centre for Environmental Rights, VEM, and ACA social media will all be sharing updates on the case. And there is, of course, the Cancel Call website. And we'll send out an email to all those who attended afterwards with just some of those details to keep up to date with what's happening as well.
Thank you so much, Karina. A big thank you to the Cancel Call campaign team. A big thank you to the Life After Call comms team. A big thank you to the Center for Environmental Rights. A big thank you to Groundwork, VEM, Vukani Environmental Movement. A big thank you to everybody who attended this webinar. Like I said, this is very historical, and we had to take some time off to reflect and celebrate and maybe share, the judgment and the stories and the whole campaign itself in terms of where it came from and where it is now and where it's going. So thank you all. I want to say some credit to Chris Lowe for those beautiful images you saw at the beginning of this webinar, which were shot at the Pretoria High Court in Johannesburg. Chris Lowe is a photographer based in Johannesburg. Other than that, I thank you all.
Apologies, technical difficulties. 1 second.
Engifisa kwenzeke nje for i-cancel call ukuthi abantu babe aware, cause most of emalahleni abantu bayaphela because of i-air pollution. So kumele thina abantu esikhona sizimeleni, sisukumeni and say #cancel call, cause sifuna ukuphila nathi siphefumula umoya clean.
For me, cancel coal sets a precedent for no new coal in South Africa, and really it's a landmark for justice and change for so many frontline communities who on a daily basis suffer the harshest consequences of the climate crisis.
We may not be directly, affected by the coal mines, but the system still supports profit over people, of which we feel like it's wrong.
People have also said that their situations made worse through a sense of institutional betrayal because governments continue to invest in fossil fuel energies.
Because of the nature of the climate crisis, we know that many of the impacts that are coming down the line are going to impact those that are currently children as well as future generations.
Into engasijabulisa kakhulu nalesifisa ukuyenza to support le cancel call case ukuthi sihlanganise abantu abasha endaweni eyodwa ukuthi kube yibo lebahamba phambili ukuthi benzele ukuthi babe yingcenye yale future letako ngaphandle kwemalahla ukuze bakwazi ukuziprepare kusenesikhathi.
I think the most power that we have is within our voice to say this is not right. This has to come to an end. We need to start seeing people being prioritized, the environment being prioritized.
Into engibonayo mina ukuthi singabantu abasha kubalulekile ukuthi sisukumele ikusasa lethu that we envision, ikusasa that has sustainable jobs, that has healthy people and a good environment.
There are a lot of people with interesting programs, with step-by-step things you can do. But number one is you need to care. And the time's running out for us. That's why it's important to wake up and see what's going on now.
Thanks, everyone. The video is available with a lot of our other cancel call videos on the Life After Call Instagram page. And also feel free to reach out if you'd like high-res copies of any of the resources. You can reach out directly to me at lifeaftercall@gmail.com. Okay, thanks, everyone.